Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Mike Walsh with CSBA, and I want to thank you for joining us as we continue our series on the County Board Governance Handbook. And today, the subject is perspectives on shared governance, a focus on what shared governance looks like in practice. Now, I'm from CSBA, but today you may notice I'm wearing my Butte County Office of Education colors, nice and proud. And it's because I want to, just as a reminder to myself more than anything else, that as a county trustee, this conversation is important for me as well. And also because I've brought some friends along and I'll have them introduce themselves shortly. But the goal for today is help you to think about how the trustee handbook and the statutory functions document that the county superintendents have, how those documents are designed to work together, not just as resources, but as tools to strengthen how governance teams operate together in service of students. So again, I'm joined today by three individuals I have a deep respect for and who bring important perspectives to this conversation. Nicole Glentzer, the County Superintendent of Schools from Mendocino County. Dr. Faris Sabbah is the County Superintendent of Schools from Santa Cruz County Office of Ed. And Derick, Lennox, Senior Director of Governmental Relations and Legal Affairs with the California County Superintendents. And again, I'll let them introduce themselves and share more about their backgrounds and why they are here and think this is an important conversation as well. But as always, before we get started, just a couple quick housekeeping items. If you have a question, drop it in the chat in the Q&A section. As you can see the big highlighted graphic we have on the screen. Thank you, Producer Che. You'll hear me refer to Producer Che as if producer is his first name. As far as I'm concerned, it should be his first name, last name, title, everything. I'm just going to go with Producer Che. I can't do this without him. But just drop your questions in that chat area. We will monitor that and we'll do our best to make sure we answer your questions. I think the three guests we have are going to make sure everything is so clear, there won't be any questions. But just in case, please put them in there. We joked earlier about lowering the bar of expectations. Oops, I keep raising the bar on our expectations. So there's more to be done. Also, again, just in there, we'll keep track of those questions because we want to make this as much of a conversation as possible and not really a lecture. So let me go ahead and get started by having them introduce themselves. So again, as you can see, here's our panelists. And so I'm going to ask that we just kind of go in this order for now. And tell everyone who's here joining us live, who are you? What is your role? And I think more important than anything, why is this conversation important enough for you that you're taking time out of a very busy schedule? I want to acknowledge that right off the bat, right? There's this high expectation that county superintendents and Derick as well, that you're all busy doing some really important things for us, but you've taken time out of your schedule to join us for this conversation. So I'd love for you to talk about, again, who are you, a little bit about your role and why this conversation is so important to you that you've taken the time out of your busy schedule. So, and let's go in that order. So Nicole, if you could start us off, please.
Sure. So I'm the Mendocino County Superintendent of Schools, and I think the reason why I think this is really important is because the role that we play in supporting the students throughout our counties, our respective counties, is really important to their success. The healthier that we are as an agency, as a governing team, the more helpful we are to them. And they rely on us for a lot. So I think having clarity in our roles is so important so that we can be a healthy organization, healthy governance team to really support the districts that really need us.
Thank you. All right. Well, then let's keep it moving along. Go right back to the next. Oh, go back one more, Producer Che. We jumped ahead of it here. So let's go ahead and Dr. Sabbah, please tell us about yourself.
Yes. Hi. Good morning. Thanks for having us, Mike. Faris Sabbah. I serve as the County Superintendent of Schools for Santa Cruz County. And, I think something that happened during the pandemic and after was a greater recognition of the importance of schools and as a hub for a lot more than just learning. And they also became the epicenter for a lot of advocacy and a lot of both on the political side as well as people recognizing the important role that school boards play. And many of the challenges that occur in school districts that we've seen across the state have been related to governance, confusion about roles, confusion about where are the different lanes that we have to operate within. And I think that it's so important for us to be putting this on the table, to be transparent about the importance of governance, to ensure one, obviously to prevent some of the conflict that we've seen in some areas, and also to ensure that we are our eye is focused on students and not being not having disruptions that are occurring that are taking us away from that focus. And so I think governance is something we need to be talking about. It needs to be front and center, and something that has a huge impact on our ability to be able to serve our students to the best of our abilities.
I, I echo a lot of what you just shared, the notion of that the students and the importance of their story and how we move those things forward. So thank you for that. Derick, you're up next.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me here. I'm Derick Lennox with the California County Superintendents. My role with the statewide association is twofold. I'm the chief lobbyist and I oversee our governmental relations team. And then secondly, I also work on legal affairs for the association, which includes updating our statutory functions handbook, which we'll talk about later. I think for me at the statewide level, I'm obviously not like the panelists here and the folks that are participating in the audience who are county board members. You all have that direct relationship with your communities and with your students, and that's really powerful. So my job is to support you all, and I do that by working really closely with the rest of Mike's team at CSBA, and making sure that our two associations are working really well together and that we are aligning on our priorities, supporting each other, and also, importantly, from time to time, we make sure that we give each other the space we need in our respective lanes when things are related to county board issues or county superintendent issues, and we just try to be helpful behind the scenes. And that happens quite a bit. So I'm very lucky to have this relationship. And I think on a personal note, I have three young kids, age 7, 5, and 3. You can see some of them in the background here. And so watching them go through school, the two older ones now, it's just really impressed upon me how much depends on the adults in the system and at the school site having good relationships and working well together, which is true in so many aspects of our life. But the more that we can contribute to that, I know that we can do like Nicole and Faris were saying and support our kids.
So one of the themes that I'm already hearing that's coming out loud and clear in this conversation is the importance of relationships. That's the first time I've heard this. No, I kid. That's my sarcasm. But this is a conversation that comes up often, is about relationships. So I want to jump into this thing about the relationships and shared governance, because that's really what that focus is on. So let's start this conversation with, why does professional learning matter so much for shared governance? I'm an elected official. The two of the three of you are elected officials. Derick, you get to work with elected officials, right? So predominantly, even in the superintendents, majority are elected. So we're talking about elected officials, but we're also talking about professional learning and professional development and shared governance. Please, someone tie those together for me. What's the impact of ongoing development? Why is this such an important thing? I'm an elected, and people elected me as I am. So talk a little bit about why you see this ongoing learning, professional learning and ongoing development and shared governance, blah, 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 everything we've been talking about so far. Whoever would like to go first, jump in.
I'm happy to start us off a little bit. You know, I think a lot of when you have elected officials and when you have folks in education, we come from all kinds of different backgrounds and different walks of life, and we bring different perspectives. If I worked at a district, which I did for 20 years, I may have a perspective of what a district school board responsibility is and how that works with a superintendent. And then when I moved into the county office of education, there was a new set of rules, a new set of statutes, a new set of approaches and for us to follow. And I think that professional learning gives us the opportunity to be able to have a space where we can learn as much as possible, share our previous experience, build on that knowledge, and then use tools like the handbook, like the governance handbook, to be able to help us, to guide us in that learning process. I also think that recognizing that having a safe space with professionals and experts who are able to help facilitate that process is the best way for us to be able to to build on our existing knowledge and be able to develop the skill set to be effective with each other. And so professional learning, I think, is extremely important. I think it's really important for us as superintendents and in working with our boards to make a commitment to ongoing learning, recognizing that there's constantly things are changing, the laws are changing. We need to rely on experts. We need to rely on understanding past practice and also understanding about how we can co-create the future working relationship. And that professional learning is fundamental for our ability to do that.
Thank you.
I'll add to
Jump in, Nicole.
that. We're at institutions of learning. So first of all, if we're not learning, we're doing a poor job of modeling to students what it is to be a grown-up, really. But I think especially as a board member, the ongoing professional development, the landscape of education is changing all the time, and that can be frustrating. But the changes come about for a reason. Even if we disagree with the reasons, they're coming about for a reason. And understanding why are changes coming about? Every time there's new legislation, what problem were we trying to solve? And then learning how can we implement this? Now, the implementation of new legislation may not be the job of the board all the time. But understanding the struggles and the work of the districts that we support and of our own schools, that the county operated schools, is really important. And I think in addition to that, when we're elected, we come with a certain level of or base of knowledge, like Faris said. And I too came from a school district, and coming into the district or the county office, there's a lot that's going on in the county office that I really had no idea that was going on. And if that new information doesn't change how I operate, then I'm not doing a good job of really meeting the needs, not only of the organization, but of the schools and students that the organization supports. And I think the same thing for our board members. When they come in, sometimes it feels like there's this fire hose of acronyms and ideas, and what about the LCAP, and what about the budget? And there's all this stuff that they learn pretty quickly. And it's so important to gain an understanding of what your decisions, the impact of the decisions that the board makes, and without spending time as a board or attending CSBA or other learning opportunities, it's really hard for a board to know the impact of their decisions, because that's not always, you don't always see that. And I think it's also really important to see what other communities are doing, how other people are implementing legislation or new changes, because you get so many good ideas. So professional learning is just so important to make sure that our agencies are always rising to the occasion and offering the very best we can offer to our students.
So I'm going to slow us down for a second, because I love what I'm hearing. So Che, if you'll go ahead and put up slide 5 for me for a second. Because I'm hearing something here, and I want to check on it for just a second here. We're talking about this notion of learning together, because I've got my background, right? I've been a board member now I'm in my 15th and a half year, right? And so rolling in December will be a completion of 16 years. And what I've noticed is that, yes, there's a lot of learning to go on. There's a lot constantly. And I'm still, in our last board meeting, I'm learning things that I didn't really fully understand and appreciate. Every webinar, every conference I go to, I learn more about the students and things that I already thought I knew. But a lot of that is around the compliance work that we tend to be, this compliance. What I refer to as technical work is around the programs, practices, and services and policies. That's where that stuff lives. But it doesn't sound like that's what you're really talking about. It sounds like you're talking about the stuff that is the deeper dive around the transformative work, which is where the adaptive work and everything, the changes start to happen. That's really about my experiences, beliefs, relationships, and all of those things. That's what I think I'm hearing you talk about, is the purpose behind our learning together, so that we can have that transformative. And before I bring Derick in, just real quick, either from Faris or from Nicole, what are your thoughts around that transformative part of this work, not necessarily just the compliance? Because I've been involved with work with both your boards and your governance teams, and I'm noticing that you spend a lot of time in conversation, not on programs, practices, and services, but on the story of the students, and how are we working with each other, beliefs and partnerships. So if each of you could just touch on that momentarily, and you both have opened up your microphone, so whoever wants to, you can rock, paper, scissors and see who goes first. But I would love to touch on that a little bit because I think this is where we're really trying to head with that.
Well, I think that if we just focus on compliance, we're checking a box. It's I don't know that it's even duty driven. We're just placating someone. And none of us came into education to just check a box and placate people. We came into education to really serve students and really help them reach their full potential. And in order to do that, we can't just check a box. And you know the required professional development or trainings that board members have to take part in are all intended to help with some deeper work, or they're intended to help keep boards from getting in trouble. And not doing a bad job is not the same as doing a good job. And if we just want to not do a bad job, then we just do the minimum. If we want to do a good job, we need to take it a step further. And that requires professional development and conversation that focuses on true transformation rather than just saying, yes, we did it and we're compliant now.
Yeah, if I could add to that, I think that, governance is really about a community of leadership. Board members and administrators are getting a lot of information and feedback from community members individually and separately. And I think having a shared space, and many times in a public forum, because, for the Brown Act, where they're learning together and they're able to identify those shared values, those shared ideas, those shared, and being grounded in those, I think is extremely important. And so I think that the transformative grounding values base is as important as Nicole is saying as that technical aspect and understanding compliance and the laws. And I also think that the fact that it happens in a professional learning space with each other builds on that shared sense of leadership and sense and having grounding in values that makes it so that as a group, this community of leaders, this governance team can be more effective.
So if I hear you both correctly, it's an opportunity for us to have a collective understanding of how we all see this work so that we can move together. And it really creates that local issue around if politics is local, here's how we are going to see this as a team. Got it. So Derick, let's bring you in here because we've been talking about you without talking to you. So please share your thoughts around that. And then I want to bring up another slide in just a second. But your thoughts, because I've been watching you kind of do a little bit of head nod, and I think this is resonating
I'm
with you
nodding
as well.
along because these are smart people talking, and I'm in agreement. Well, as a preliminary matter, because I know we have board members on the call here, this is my humble observation. One of the great opportunities that we have in our education system, and I see this as you all come to Sacramento and I meet with you or I'm out in the field, is the diversity of board members representing communities from across the state. And I think one of the only ways that we get that is by supporting those board members, because they're not coming necessarily to the board with a vast experience in K-12, like policy and all this kind of stuff. And that's not necessarily what you want. That's great to have. But I mean, for me in my local community, I would rather have somebody who's really of the community, with the community, and then we help support and build them up. So I love like the idea of professional learning and the way that it can support diverse board members from all different communities to be a part of the governance team. I will say I love the iceberg though, and this really connects to our shared work together, because one of the things we often see lawmakers do, and I don't think this is like a bad thing, but it's a thing, is they see what happens above the water, right? They see an event, they see a headline, they hear about something from the community, they write a bill about it. That's the event level, that's the surface level, that's an incident that occurred. They're not getting to the next level about, okay, well, what are the patterns around that issue? What are the systems that create the conditions that lead to this issue? What are the mindsets and beliefs about our students and what they can accomplish that lead to those systems? So I think that's like the great opportunity for us all to work together at the state level. And when you all meet with your local electeds, is to help teach them about your communities and about your students and help get below the surface level into like what are the patterns that you see, what are the experiences of families, what are the mindsets that we can transform to lead to better outcomes. And I think that can only come from the ground up. It doesn't work when it comes from the top down, and that's one of the shared roles that board members and superintendents have together.
Mike, can I add something real quick?
Please, please.
I love how our system, I mean, there are so many things about our system that I think many of us would change if we could. But one thing I really appreciate about it is that with the board governance structure, that by design, that's not a group of educational experts that come to make governing decisions about school districts or about the county schools. The board members come from all different walks of life. And I think that's really, really important because the professional learning that we do is not just about programs, but also about the different perspectives of our community. And the only way to really get that well, there's lots of ways to get that, but a main way that the board gets that is through conversation with each other. That's why the discussion about board items is so important, because one board member who has a business background may have a very different perspective on something than a board member who has a background in public service. And so I think that education and the role that people bring is really, really important. And I love it. I've seen a lot of new board members, they come on and they feel very intimidated sometimes. Like, well, if I were a retired teacher, maybe I would understand this more. And that's lovely when retired educators come on a board. But also you need that diversity of backgrounds. And I love it when I see board members start to own their voice on their board and really sharing their perspective from either the area that they represent or the field that they come from. So I think the education is not just, or the professional development and learning is not just learning about programs, learning about legislation, it's also learning about our own community through the lens of each person on the board.
So I'm going to go ahead and amen on all of the above. I'm going to add the next slide. I'm going to go ahead and bring this up because this is really, again, why we all supposed to be here. We've got these two documents, and again, we're talking about transformation. So I'd love to start with you, Derick. Talk a little bit about, so this is, we're moving away from compliance, but again, compliance isn't a bad deal. Compliance is where we need to start. It keeps us, I always tell folks, that's what keeps us off the front page of the paper, is when we're complying. So I love the fact that there's before I jump ahead, talk a little bit about how you see the difference between the handbook and the statutes and how they work together out of the front page, but also moving towards transformation.
Yeah, that's a great handle that one. Sorry. That's a great framing, Mike, because compliance is necessary but not sufficient. And what we hear often in Sacramento from districts and counties that are doing great things is they're doing all of those things in spite of whatever the legislature comes up with. So the legislature creates the newest, greatest, shiny object program, which is really well intended and is a good thing. But the great districts are going to say, okay, how do we comply with that? By building it into what we're already doing strategically. And I love that. So here I have our statutory functions handbook. And I want to point out something that's at the very beginning, which for the first time ever, we have a foreword by Vernon Billy, which we're really excited about because, again, it's modeling that collaboration. And then with your trustee handbook, perfect, there it is. I believe our president has a forward in that too. So
yes, he does.
Ours is really about what the law says. And the CSBA handbook, and I'll let you talk about this, Mike, because you're the expert, but it's about getting into the practice of it and the mirror work and the reflection work. So, we don't pretend that this is all the deep levels of the iceberg. This is necessary from a legal standpoint and to understand what the law says, and the legislature uses this book and other things. But I'll let you talk about how your handbook gets into more of the practice areas.
Well, thank you for trying to turn the tables on me, but I'm going to use that same perfect segue. That was as if you knew what was next. So I would love to have Faris and Nicole answer your question for you, because I think I've been working with both boards, complete transparency, as a CSBA governance consultant. I have done some work with both of your boards. And I love those conversations because I think they do exactly what Derick talked about. They start to dive into those conversations really around this shared governance and the focus of how do we move. So, what have your experiences been, Nicole and Faris, when we talk about how these two documents work together as we move into transformation?
Well, I think that the together they're very complementary. I see this the statutory aspect is really kind of the focal point of the top of that iceberg that we saw earlier. And I really appreciated Derick's comment. It's like important and it's not enough. The how we take those statutes and rules and regulations and how it actually applies and manifests itself is a combination of how we pool our resources, how we build our budgets, how we establish programs, and really deliver on the promise that some of those statutes and our values are pushing forward. And so, in the best case scenario, all those things line up. Our the statutes, our resources, our values are all lined up. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen perfectly a lot. We have to work through that, and that requires conversations about maybe competing resources and having to understand that we can work within compliance and of certain statutes, but we're going to have to really focus on something first before we do something else. And that work it really takes a lot of negotiating and a lot of relationship building, and also building on those values to make sure that we have a shared sense of understanding and commitment, and recognizing that we can't have everything that everybody's interests and thoughts are gonna get through. And having a facilitator like you, Mike, when you come in and you work with our boards, and you help us kind of work through the negotiated aspect of this governance process, that is extremely important, because not only are we learning to do it in that moment, you're helping to build the skills to be able to do it on an ongoing basis, because you're not always going to be around. And the next challenge may be very different than this one. And so the handbook, I think, is also wonderful because it also helps us understand the different roles that we play, and make sure that we are working within that structure to be able to support each other in a way that's going to lead us to the best possible outcomes in support of students. And so I think the professional learning and support, and making sure that we understand the statutory aspects, and of course the handbook, are all complementary and a necessary part of this very positive movement forward in terms of the most effective type of governance.
Anything you want to add, Nicole?
Yeah, I see the statutory functions book almost like a board policy. And if that were the board policy, the administrative regulation would be the county board governance handbook. One says what we do, and the other kind of says how we do it. And I am finding them both so helpful. I was carrying them around with me everywhere I went, which is, super nerdy for sure, but because I would think of things, be like, oh, I want to check that out. And as I read them, for example, when I look at the statutory, I'm looking to my side here because I have them together in a binder, and I reference them both pretty frequently. When I look at the statutory functions, I found things that, oh my goodness, we're not doing quite right in our agency. So we've made some changes. And then when I refer to the county board governance, I see a kind of some different ways, or a different way of looking at it, and the application of some of the statutory functions. So they go together very well. And I took the statutory functions handbook and had AI highlight everywhere where it said county superintendent, and in one color, and then in another color everywhere where it said county board, and share that with my board members, because as far as a quick reference, it's really helpful to look at the document and just see where your role is plugged in that document. And for me, it really helps align our work.
I love the conversation right now, because there's a question that comes up from time to time, and I'm always shocked when I hear board members talk about this. There are some boards, again, not every board, very few. There's a few, and I see these from time to time. What is it that when we talk about MIG training, right? The Master's in Governance. We always talk about the role that county boards, our roles, responsibilities, and then on another part of the Venn diagram, there's the county superintendent of schools, what their work is, and then there's that shared governance in between around strategic goals, vision, and advocacy work, everything you've already been describing. But what happens from time to time is, like you said, Faris, I love the term negotiating. We get to negotiate how all this stuff plays out, how we work, how we are going to work on the things together. What I'd love to know then is where it comes in sometimes where the relationship breaks down. What my own opinion, based on my experience, is that it tends to become a matter of, well, the superintendent's role, it's clear, it's articulated, but sometimes I don't like it. I don't agree with it. So, how do is it important that I understand the superintendent's work, even when it's not part of my role? And if it is, how do I push back? How do I challenge? How do I get more knowledge and understanding and exercise my oversight, but still respecting that authority? And this is, I know I'm having you thread a needle right now, but I think this is one of the more important ones. It's the reason behind this shared governance and how we're supposed to do things again as a governance team. So, Faris, you've got your roles, and there are some things that you have going on that I want to question. How do I do that effectively, respectfully, and still knowing it's ultimately your authority for this moment, in that moment? How do I do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about relationship early on, and I think relationship is really important. When folks begin the process of launching their campaign to become county board members, we reach out to them and offer for them to come in and learn about the County Office of Education, and we talk about things that are in the handbook and understanding the different roles. So I think starting early is in terms of building that relationship is really important. And I do think that if we're able to find common ground on the values level, on the relationship level, on the respect level, it goes a long way. I also think that having tools like the statutory functions, like the handbook, the governance handbook, are extremely helpful because it makes it this is not about me. It's not about me trying to protect my domain. This is actually what historically and legally are the roles that we play. And I think that that's really important is as part of that relationship, and also that sense of community of governance as opposed to an individual government. Generally, a board is a single board member is their role, really their power comes when they are working as a group. And so emphasizing the individual and emphasizing the idea of working together as a group is so important. And I think it's important also for the other board members to be able to engage and participate in ensuring that we're creating that safe space where we're able to call each other when we have difficult conversations, and yet not challenge the fundamental governance structure that is designed to make us work together in an effective way. And so I think that building on that is something that also creates history, having both experienced board members as well as new board members coming on, bringing new ideas and thoughts. The idea, I think, is to protect that community of governance and be able to ensure that we're continuing to focus on the needs of students, the needs of our community, and not to get caught up in any kind of power struggle.
Love it. Nicole, please add to that.
The work of a county superintendent is as diverse as the work of every county office of education and every board. There is, everyone comes into this position with the needs in their county are different, the programs in their county are different. So there's, the board that I work with now, there's a number of things that I'll bring up in a report and they're like, oh, I didn't know that you did that, So it's hard to keep track of all the things that a county superintendent may be doing. And sometimes it can be disappointing that they're not doing something that is really important to you. So I think when there's this idea of, there's something as a board member that the board member may want to see done differently, I think it's really important to ask, what role does this issue have in the matters that are governed by the county board? And I think a lot of that comes down to a lot of what the board does is really important to some of our most delicate students in our county are served by our county schools. And so if there's a topic that is completely unrelated to the work of the board, it doesn't mean it shouldn't be discussed, but I think it's with the idea of why are we going to spend time on this? What is important here? Because the work of supporting our county schools is super important. And literally, there is no one else to do that work. Literally, we are all they have at this point. And so I think that it's really important for county boards to focus on that really important work, and not see it as secondary to the other stuff happening at the county level, which sometimes in discussions, it's not the first thing that people are talking about, because there's so much that a county office does, but the county board does less. And thank goodness they do, because those students deserve to have a board focused on their needs. And so I think, as I've heard, through CSBA trainings and different meetings with county board members, there's so much good stuff going on in our state. It's really impressive. And I see some of the best work is coming back to, we're doing this so that the students in our schools have this additional service or have this additional opportunity. And so I think it's really important to keep that as a forefront of the work of the county board, because it's really important work that literally no one else is doing. And lots of people are doing, if the concern is, well, we should have better professional development. We should always have better professional development, and county offices all offer professional development, and so do a whole bunch of other people, a whole bunch of other organizations. But there's only one group focused on the governance of the county schools. And so I think it's really important to keep coming back to that, because those students deserve to be on the forefront of our minds.
Derick, I want to bring you in right now because I think this is part of what you were alluding to earlier, is that there's all this work that is happening. And what really serves as an opportunity, even though as a county board member, again, I'm in Butte, and even though I'm not responsible for a lot of the work that's happening that the county superintendent does, it's still an opportunity for me to be an ambassador of it, which I think ties back to the advocacy work that we are also really responsible for. So that we may have a program that's not specific to our schools, but it's something. For example, we have a fantastic program that's going on with Caltrans, and that's not in my wheelhouse whatsoever. But the notion of the work that we are doing because of that, the lives that we are impacting, changing, folks who are now coming out of incarcerated programs, who are now finding work that's meaningful and allows them to take care of their families, and kind of that transformation point. I want to be an ambassador and spread the word about that and brag all day long. So is that kind of what you were talking about earlier, that there's a lot of great stuff going on and we have this opportunity to really do some work around that? Tie that up for me, please.
Yeah, that's a great example. And I can think of another example where, through our partnership with county board members, we were effective in helping to change some of the mindsets and beliefs about the students that we serve. But it really had to come from that partnership, because you all are the governing board for these schools. We operate them. You are the governing board. The buck stops with the county board members. And that was a few years ago, when we knew for many decades that our juvenile court and county community schools were being underfunded. And even post LCFF, where we saw a lot of new money coming into the system on a weighted formula, not enough of it was going to juvenile court and community schools, which are really specialized settings, and they need more than just a typical school site for a lot of reasons. So at the beginning of those conversations with the legislature, it was hard to hear, but we heard a lot of comments about, like, those kids, from policymakers. And I think county board members were really effective at saying, no, time out. You mean our kids, our students, the ones that we serve. And each time that correction occurs, it builds upon itself. And by the end, legislators and policymakers who had no ill intent but didn't know, we're now talking about the students that we serve differently and about the importance of it and the resources that they need and the way that the systems have not served them the best in the past and the opportunity to do better. So I do think that there's a collective opportunity in the language and the communication that we do use to, as my colleague said, be an ambassador for our students.
I love this conversation because what I've noticed has been consistent throughout is that we've talked about students at the center of everything. And we land on it, and what are we doing for the students? And it doesn't matter which role we're talking about, whether it's the superintendent's role, whether it's the board member role, that the work is important. Period. We could have opened this conversation, this webinar, with that one sentence and said, all right, thanks everybody, have a fantastic day. But I love the fact that we've dug in a little more to give some that background behind it. So here's what I want to do. Real quickly, Nicole, I'm going to go with you first. I know in the past you've kind of alluded towards this, but if you could really give that statement about how your board has navigated past challenges to become really unified in conversation, and I mean that sincerely. It was just with your board, and what I noticed was this moment of everyone was focused on how are we. I heard a lot about how are we going to do things together as a board. How did you get there? Because I know it wasn't always that way, and I've been in a lot of boards. It's not always that way. How did yours get there?
So we've had some transition on our board, and whenever there's change on the board, it's a good opportunity, a good excuse to bring in training. There's never a bad time, but that's an especially important time to bring in training. And so as we've had some transition on our board, we focus on some additional training and meeting with each other in some study sessions, and learning about one another, which has been really important. In our last meeting, which was, I think, especially impressive to me, I was very impressed with our county board. We focused on getting to know the students that we serve. Now, we did not invite the students to the meeting. That would not have worked out very well logistically. But we invited the principal of our schools. We're a small county, so we have one principal that oversees three of our schools. And to talk about the backgrounds of the students that we serve, how long they're in our programs, what are some of the struggles that they are facing in their daily lives, and what are some of the things that we're working on to help them return to their home school. And I think that as I sat through so many board meetings with a really wonderful board, with such a strong desire to help students. All of us come to our wherever we are now with our own idea of what the student experience is, primarily based on our own experience or the experience of our own children. The experience of our students who are incarcerated or in our community schools, and for us, we operate a special education school, those experiences are pretty unique. And that is not the background that many of us have. And so to really expand our learning, to learn about the needs of our students. So when we're talking about student voice, how do we get student voice? And it may not look the same as it does in other schools where there's an active student body with a student body president who's elected every year, because those are the experiences that many of us have through our own experience or through the experience of our children. And so what we've seen, and still we have some new board, our newest board member, I think, is in her third month now. So, but really this conversation about students and what their needs are, and focusing on that, really focusing on what our actual work is, and I say ours. My role with the board obviously is different, but what the role of the board is with those students, and really underscoring the importance of meeting the needs of those students. And I think that is, it's surprising to many community members that think that we're the boss of the other schools, that our board is the boss of the other school boards, and that's not their role. And so it's important that our board know their role, but we've also discussed the importance of learning what the needs of our districts are, even if the board doesn't have the authority to make a decision for a district or related to a district, the importance of elevating the conversation about the work of our school districts and really understanding their struggles, which are different from a county office. There's some that are the same, but there's many different struggles that districts have that county offices only see but don't experience firsthand. So we've done a lot of work on that, and also just to add one more thing in there, really keeping in mind the importance of understanding our community by being plugged into what's going on in what some of our districts, not because we're decision makers there, but because we at some point may hear an interdistrict transfer request. We don't want our only experience or understanding of a school district to be what we hear in an interdistrict transfer request or in an expulsion hearing appeal. So we've done a lot of work in really trying to plug in and stay tuned.
I love this. All right. So we've been having a lot of this conversation. I'm going to start to kind of put a cap on what I'm hearing, and then we're going to take your 30-second most brilliant statement. I mean, you guys have been setting the bar kind of high, but I'm going to see if I can get you to do a 30-second version of it, which I have zero chance of doing 30 seconds of anything. So let me put it to you this way. So Producer Che, we've got slides 6 and 7. I want to talk about these two real quickly. And just to give you a sense of, this is where when I think about everything you both have been, the three of you have been describing, especially for our superintendents, this notion of closure, which is the quality of membership, try that again, the quality of member relations within the board. How close is your board, your governance team? How well do you handle difficult conversations? With both of you have been talking quite a bit about the work you've done to get to that point. And that the reason why that's so critically important is because it gives all of our governance team, to Derick's point, the ability to influence outside that boardroom. So when we're talking to the legislature, we're talking to the community, because we are so united in what we're describing in the work that we see the importance of, that we have the ability to influence and change our advocacy role. That's the important part for me. And then when it's missing, the reason why that's a challenge is that if you have a board that's struggling with power struggles, missed opportunities, loss of influence, etc., then the people who are suffering the most because of that are going to be the students, which again, that has been the center of this entire conversation around how do you get to shared governance. And the cure for that is team building, which is really the conversation we're having right now. Having a conversation with your board. That's all team building is. And I really want to move people away from this notion that team building is an activity you do for 3 minutes in the middle of the board meeting. Team building is the conversation about how are we going to be together so that we can go out and be more effective on behalf of our students. So here's what I'd love for you to do. Final question as we roll and give people back the rest of their day. What do you hope, 30 seconds or less, I'm not going to tie you to that 30 seconds. I don't have a timer, but that's my goal. 30 seconds or less, what do you hope participants take away from our conversation today about shared governance, the handbook, statutory functions, and focusing on students? Derick, we're going to make you go first this time because why not? Why not? I mean,
I'm the least qualified to answer your question because I'm sitting next to two sitting county superintendents. I will just say, if you all have questions about what's in this document, feel free to come to me. I'll say also that I had the pleasure of working with CSBA's legal counsel to have them look at this, and we worked with counsel and myself to look at your document. So there should be good alignment between the two. So never hesitate to reach out. Happy to be of service to county board members, just like I am to my own members. It's good for the gander to make sure we're all sharing information and being in relationship with one another. And with that, I'll hand it off to Nicole or Faris.
He just called it. Nicole, you got to go first.
Okay.
And by the way, Derick, you're good. That was a perfect statement because I love the notion that, yes, there's some partnership and alignment between CSBA and the county superintendents. Nicole, you're up.
How lucky are we that we get to work in education? It is the most rewarding field to be associated with. And educators, board members, teachers, bus drivers, all have this sacred work. How lucky are we? And how frustrating can it be for us all as well, right? And I think those frustrations that we have locally at the state level, whatever it may be, that things aren't moving fast enough or things are moving too fast, none of these are new issues. Everybody's got their own unique issues, but no one's in it alone. And I think that is one of the things that I've appreciated about the field of education is the willingness of people to share and learn from each other and not hold good ideas to themselves. We're not in competition. We are all in this together because we are literally impacting the future of our nation, of our world through education. So I just feel really fortunate to work in this field, and so grateful to the board members who are willing to take the time to do some of the most frustrating and unrewarded, unacknowledged work that is required to make this really sacred work happen. So I just hope that board members leave this with their we probably didn't say anything that alleviated any frustration, but I hope that after this session they're renewed in their determination to really focus on the needs of students.
Faris,
Yeah,
if you want to follow that, good luck.
If I could add to that, I think that, don't discount the power of investing in thoughtful opportunities and time and resources for building relationship between the governance team, between the superintendent and different board members outside of the board meeting, before the board meeting, after the board meeting, building those relationships. Also, that focus. I love what Nicole talked about, bringing the stories of students and the power of the impacts of our services. That is such a unifying factor that helps bring us together in such a powerful way. Having positive program reports with stories of students at every board meeting, and creating space where thoughtful and real conversations, where we can have tough conversations with each other, and that build on the relationship and actually strengthen the relationship instead of create conflict. So spending time, professional learning opportunities, maybe with facilitation if necessary, and then utilizing the tools that are in existence will help keep us aligned and will help us make it so that when conflicts come up, we talk about it as how are we going to be able to overcome these challenges to move forward in a positive way, so that the energy is towards overcoming obstacles and not any kind of conflict within the group. And then keeping that focus on students. I think that dedicated time and resources on this work is extremely important.
So I'm going to wrap it up, and I'm going to read one of the questions. And I think both of you literally just answered this question wonderfully. Are there good practices for a county superintendent who is elected to build relationships with their board and board members? What does that look like? And I think to a T, everything you both just described about the importance of dedicating the time to those conversations around how are we going to be, again, team building is answering the question, how do we want to be with each other while we work with each other? And that's what both of you have described wonderfully. So I want to wrap this up and just talk about shared governance. From what this conversation has really been about, isn't defined by whether or not we have nice documents. It's defined because that's, again, as you said earlier, Nicole, that's the bare minimum, right? That's the place where we have to be able to say that's expected, but that's not the transformative area. But that is really what we're defining by how people choose to work together. That's what shared governance is. And the statutory functions and the trustee handbook give us some clarity, but it's the relationships, the trust, and the willingness to understand each other's roles that really bring our work to life. What I've understood and what I've always felt is that when governance teams commit to learning together, collaborating with intention, and supporting one another's roles, that's when we move beyond compliance and into the real impact for students and their ability to gain. Governance doesn't improve because we have the right documents. It improves when we choose to understand each other's work and lead together with intention. So, Producer Chev, if you could just do me one more favor and put up that last slide 10. We'll go to slide number 10. I want to spend a little time real quickly promoting. I always got to promote. I've got the audience here. Might as well tell them what's coming up next. So our county MIG, we've already had session 1. The next 2 will be happening for session 2, and 3 will be at Yolo County Office of Ed. And then September 24th, we will have our 4th meeting at the Marina Del Rey Marriott. Now, why is that important? Because the 25th through the 27th, we are going to be holding the county's conference at Marina Del Rey in Marriott. Now, yes, normally that's happening in beautiful Monterey. there were some challenges logistically, as in we couldn't get a hotel. Apparently, everyone loves Monterey in the fall. It's our fault. Everyone knows about it now. I'm just going to say we're the reason why. So this time, we're going to go down to Marina del Rey in Southern California at the Marriott. It's a beautiful resort where we will be together. But ladies and gentlemen, so thank you for everyone for your leadership that you do right now, helping all of us think more deeply about what shared governance looks like. Thank you to my guest. Thank you also to producer Che Munoz. Can't do this without you. It's appreciated. And everybody, again, thank you for giving them the time. Remember my favorite saying, to lead people, you love them. To save people, you serve them. And so thank you to my panel for being the kind of folks who love and serve. So everybody, thank you. And we will see you in the future. Bye now.